Lucky Boys Podcast.
Supposedly years ago, some police officer made a quote and said, more people die here than any other place in the city of New York. And that became, that became still talked about today.
It's a mischaracterization of what Chinatown is all about.
Right. I mean, there are issues, there's criminal elements everywhere. Back in those days, even, every group is having, every minority group having those issues. But to make it like the marquee issue for Chinese American and Manhattan Chinatown to be remembered by, that would be that's tragic.
Right. And I guess part of the reason why it's got its name. I mean, when I was growing up, and when I made Asian friends and started hanging out in the area playing basketball and handball and whatnot. And then when I would go down to Pell to eat, I actually went to Pell Street for summer school by that little church they had right there. And I was like, well, what's that? I was like, well, what do you mean? They were like, it's Murder Alley. I'm like, Murder Alley? Like, what was that? So what they were saying to me as a kid, as a teenage kid, they were saying, oh, it's due to all of the gang fights back in the day. Right. So they would set up meetings there, right? And then all of a sudden things would kind of go hectic, which a lot of people get killed because the way it's structured, there's not an exit. Once you enter, if they set you up and you go there, all of the exits are covered and you're pretty much getting shot up and killed. You get people from inside the stores that come out. So there's really no retreat. And then they seal off the two entrance or exits on the other side, or the three, I should say. And then also they would have people on the roof shooting down at you. So you would get it from pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. The one historic account that because I just don't, I want to know the truth, right? Is that the case? Mm-hmm. The one historical account that I found was that there was a theater there before. They were fighting over a woman, I guess. And then one group went in there and shot up like a bunch of people, like 4 or 5 people. Right.
There was I know that story. It's a rival gang. Uh-huh. And the theater group, and this was like 100 years ago, right? It's like in the late 1800s, was it? Right. Or early 1900s. And there were 2 gangs in there, the Tongs during the wars, and they had, I guess, a disagreement, mm-hmm. and they were at war with each other. However, at that theater, everyone knew that was neutral grounds.
Right.
And when that faction came, I guess because of that girl, they broke that agreement, mm-hmm. one of them, and then they attacked and killed, and that's what started.
I think like 4 or 5 people. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I said I grew up during the days in the gangs in different crazy times, and all the theaters used to have shootings, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like,
all of the theaters.
So from my own personal experience, you got to do a lot more than you got to need a Uzi to take down a whole bunch of people, and then besides, there's only certain people that, these guys are pretty targeted. These are professional. They're not just punks. Just want to, You tell it so many times, and it really happened. It got told more and more, because I'm going to credit the museum, because when they do walking tours, these guys will would bring those up. I actually make it a personal point when I see people giving out tours, I would stand next to them.
And wait until they mention it.
Then I just say, whoa.
You're like, I'm part of the tour.
Said, wait a minute. That's like
not what I
the
heard.
biggest bullshit right here.
I'm looking up right now, and they're saying exactly that. Like that was a war between the Hip Sing Tong, mm-hmm. along with their allies, the 4 brothers, against the An Liang Tong.
Right.
And these gangs ran everything from opium dens to entertainment centers to prostitution rings, et cetera, et cetera. And those were the gangs that were fighting. Yeah. And that's how it became known.
Right. So one crime scene becomes, forever. That's what you remember.
Etched in history.
I mean, people are getting killed all over Chinatown, right? Or shot or stabbed. And because it had, I guess, that cachet, that when someone died there or there was a gang war there, then it really brought more attention to it. People was like, oh, see, right there, but when in actuality, when you talk about the more current day, I guess, well, current as in like, I guess 15, 20, 30 years ago.
The 90s, 80s.
80s and 90s and maybe early 2000s, there was fights and deaths and murders. I mean, all over the place in Chinatown. All over. I remember when I was a kid, broad daylight, walking down right here, right on Bowery Canal, come out the jewelry store. And then all of a sudden, I see somebody come up with a gun, literally walking by me.
Right.
And I also think it's like media. You know, you have a lot of movies are filmed in that exact alley, right?
Yeah.
And New Jack City.
We did one over there too.
Yeah, we filmed there too. New Jack City, I think, is one of the famous like movies that was filmed in that that triangle, that alley. And it's always about, you know, crime, you know, that happens there.
It's crime. It's the gambling. Like I said, you know, what happened to all the gambling dens, right?
Yeah.
Government says, you know, this is so good. We're going to legitimize it and we're going to run it. We're going to be the house, right? So that's what happened. I think this whole crime thing, and honestly, as a kid, you know, was like, hey, it's not bad. You know, people look at us like, it's all right. Yeah. You feel a little safer, right? Yeah. You know, walk a little swag, you know, but my point is that when our own people start telling it, you legitimize, you know, this false narrative. And we need to be careful about that. Yeah. Right? Because there's some guy happened to take this one clip, this one incident, and turn into this whole thing. And then, you know, now our own people are telling this story.
Everyone's taking that and running with it without actually looking deeper into it.
And then I'm not denying it. Maybe
so in a sense, it's romanticized.
Yeah. But there are other things that really we should talk about that are really more, you know, sadly, crime and all the things, that's part of American history. Yeah. But the other part of American history is also perseverance, that these guys, you know, that the street vendors fighting to just take care of family reunification.
The immigrant story.
The immigrant story.
I remember, like, you know, tenements in Manhattan, and me growing up in there, and then, like, you know, the bathtub is in the kitchen. That's right. You know.
How many flights was that? I forget.
That was like, well, I live on the first floor, but there's 10 floors, 10 apartments.
That's insane. A 10-story walk up.
No, and there were a lot of elderly people living in that building.
And then when I went to your apartment for the first time, I said, holy shit, this guy's bathtub is in the middle of the freaking...
Yeah, the kitchen.
This is crazy.
That's why bathrooms outside, or they modified to put it inside.
The bathroom is inside. It was right next to
the
kitchen.
They usually have the bathroom to be on the outside. On the outside. You got to walk out.
Where the first time I saw something like that was with my Dominican friends. You know, when I went to their house, and I was like, "Dude, where's the bathroom?" He was like, "Here." He gave me a key. I was like, "What the fuck am I supposed to do with this?"
Oh, and it's in the hallway.
It's in the hallway. Yeah. And he goes, "Everybody else uses it." I was like, "Holy crap!" Yeah. And then his bathtub was in his kitchen. Yeah. And the way they ran their bathtub, sometimes they had to get the buckets and throw it over. They had to fill it in the kitchen sink and then put it in their bathtub. And I was like, yo, this is insane, because there was 4 of them. 4 of them. And this was one of my best friends growing up. Yeah. You know, one of my best friends growing up.
And Don, your story is unique too. You grew up in Chinatown and you experienced all that. You know, and probably like different things that from what we experienced. But
my grandfather's on Elizabeth Street, and exactly those apartments, and then you got to go to the bathrooms on the out. You know, it's outside.
I know people tell us that we're rich again, because if we were rich, holy crap! If we were one of those rich Asians in the top 1%. We wouldn't be having these experiences.
Well, that's one of the things that, you know, the Tenement Museum, when they first make the announcement, I still get invites and stuff like that, right? They raise money. And I'm like, a museum? I know people living like that right now.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So for you guys, already a museum.
That guy's one of them.
You guys are a museum, but I said, I know a lot of people who live that way right now, paying a lot of money for that. You know, but the changes in Chinatown was interesting. That the one thing I think, when I growing up, it was it's Jewish. You know, there's my step grandmother, by the way, is Jewish, right?
Well, how did that? Oh,
yeah. So my grandfather is a machinist on Baxter Street, and my step grandmother was abandoned by her family, and then she works as a custodian. So after work, they see each other. My maternal grandmother passed away.
I mean, because during that time, you know, Asians, you know, now, but especially back then, really, Asian men pretty much stick to Asian women.
Yeah.
And Jewish, I mean, if you're not Jewish, you don't share the religion. And
Well,
belief. I mean,
my
that's really hard to cross
grandfathers,
over.
they were not that many Asian women.
This is back in
Chinatown.
the
This
Chinese
is way
Exclusion Act.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is
Woody
way
Bard.
back, right? So my great grandfather is the first one to come to this country. That's his generation. Then my grandfather. So I said, like, how, you know, I thought it was normal. Why would I think it's any different, right? You know, I grew up, ask grandma, I go there, I would get matzah, and I can only drink Coca-Cola.
Matzo balls.
Matzahs, and I can only drink Coca-Cola because that's kosher, right? That is not kosher.
Yeah.
So, but it's, you know, you just think a blended family, that's normal.
What was that like having a, wow.
It's pretty cool because
a Jewish upbringing and a Chinese
that's
upbringing.
pretty cool, you know. So she's pretty much with, you know, for the longest time I said, hey, grandma, what is your last name? He goes, Lee. I'm like, okay, grandma,
Wow.
I got you.
Damn, I like it already.
Yeah, I got you, grandma. So, but they, you know, so they on Elizabeth Street, and they used to 6th floor walk up, and so, you know, so for them it was a really interesting, you know, so I learned that I know there are other cultures. So I learned like how dad, you know, grandfather, how do you, you know, so you hear those stories. But let me go back to like the shift. So there's the Jewish community that I know. There's the African American community because one of the school was like the annex. We have to walk down to Smith Housing to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the Italians, and then Latino, and then all of a sudden one day it becomes more Chinese. So for me, it's like, where did they go?
Where it becomes more Chinese?
Over time, it becomes Chinatown becomes more Chinese because
Oh,
there
okay.
used to be Italians like
Right.
Enzo, Vito. These guys went to
Right.
elementary school with me,
Right.
and then one day they like all disappear. Well, because housing, right? So when I think that Mario Biaggi is like when they build some housing, Chinese people never get to go in there. So like, all right, these are what the Italian elected official got for them, so their people moved there. Grand Street Co-op, right? It's predominantly Jewish
Right. It still
folks,
is.
right? It still is.
That
Well,
whole row is
the only
predominantly
difference
Jewish.
is when they bought it for $4,000. Now all the Chinese people buying in there are paying
It's
$900,000, that's
Right.
$1 million, right?
For a 2-bedroom co-op.
Right? So like we know, so growing up is a really I wouldn't say interesting, but you know, you're just worrying about just getting home alive and seeing my dad, so I don't even think about. But you know right away, okay, all the Jewish people are living over there, these nice fancy houses. All the Italians all of a sudden just moved to Bridge Towers and all that stuff. A lot of the Irish went to Knickerbocker, and you can see those names. I said, wow, it's like a Ponzi scheme, right? Everyone moves up, and the last one in this Ponzi scheme is the Chinese. Like,
Yeah.
shit, instead of these guys able to fight for housing and this stuff, everyone get moved up, right? $4,000 get you to Grand Street Co-op. Knickerbocker, you're in. 2 Bridge Towers, now they're selling for also $1 million, right?
Right.
You know, as growing up, you kind of like, you accept it. I'm not there to question. I'm too young to know anything. But it's something that's in your mind, like, hey, what's going on here? And then people say, hey, look, Confucius Plaza. I'm like, you cannot compare one building. And then, you know, if we have more time to talk, I'll share with you the history of Confucius Plaza, which is not
Well,
the way
please
people
go
are
into
telling
it.
it.
I would
right?
love. I don't know about it.
Yeah,
So
that's news to me.
So, you know, so you have everyone moving in different areas. So Confucius Plaza was by Tom Law's dad, who said, what are all these Mitchell Lama stuff? What are they? They said, well, you need to find a way to do this. So this is a symbol of where the community was unified. He actually,
Confucius Plaza.
So he actually talked to all the people who owned the smaller buildings here. And then
So before it was, hold on, just before it was, right, we're staring at Confucius Plaza right now.
They look like this.
And
They used to look like
it
this.
looks like this
Right.
building.
Like these buildings.
I heard that it was here's some old school Chinatown rumors again. And you could correct, but I heard that there was it was like a cemetery. And then it's built over it.
No.
No, right?
They
'Cause
were
like,
actually,
oh, Confucius Plaza is haunted.
no.
And all of this, and they have a weird wind tunnel, which they do over there whenever
No.
it gets like weird weather. And they're saying that, oh, it's because it was built, and this was when I was a kid, you know, people telling stories, and they're going, oh, it's built over a cemetery, and people sometimes commit suicide in Confucius Plaza,
No.
and et cetera,
The-
and jump off the building, and they haunt, and all that.
No,
crap.
the haunting place is actually the Bloody Triangle, where the post office is.
Okay.
So there was a fire there, and they were saying that why, I as a kid, I said, hey, why is the post office like in the middle of the street?
Right. I always thought that too.
Right. Well, why there? Why not someplace? Because there were no business ever want to open because they said it's haunted. So you need the government to be able to be strong enough to overcome that. That's what happened. There was a fire there.
We're all about feng shui.
It's a feng shui.
Yeah, and
the Wang He, you need the Wang He to, government to be able to defend it.
Right.
So that's what happened.
Can you translate that for everyone that doesn't speak Chinese?
So basically, they believe that the spirits are so strong that only like government, because it's righteous,
Right.
that they can
Overpower
that.
Where the spirits won't
Right.
go there and interrupt the business.
That's right. So that's why it became the post office. Right. That was coming from Mr. Calvin Lee, one of the original, the first postmaster for that station. He passed away very young. But again, that's the benefit of growing up in the the Lee Family Association, right? So Calvin would would tell me those stories and say, "Oh, how come you I was like, to me, he was my hero, right? You don't see too many Asian American, Chinese American, and they say, oh my God, you actually run the whole freaking place. You are the postmaster. You're a government official.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, man, especially back in the day.
Right.
That's
why one of my proudest moments growing up, I walked past Gouverneur Hospital. And if someone said to me back then, you're going to be one of the security guards, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, so cool. But in my life, it's like you said, better lucky than good. I end up being an executive cabinet for that hospital. So when I walk in and people were like judging me, right? Oh, are you here for a political contract? As I said, listen, I don't need any freaking motivation from you. I walked by here as a kid. Trust me, I'll do right by this hospital. People would question, because when you're the only Asian in the whole executive team, people would question, how did you get here? How did you get here? But again, it's so unusual. But going back to Confucius Plaza, they used to be like this. And so Tom Law's dad gets up with a bunch of people and said, if we can have this property, this lot, then we can apply and become a Mitchell Llama. So he ended up getting all of these guys to agree to sell the property or come together.
It's one of the only buildings that's recognizable when you're not in Chinatown and you're somewhere else. If you're at a rooftop bar, or if you're down not too far where other buildings are towering over it, and you can use that as a landmark to visually see Chinatown from far away.
But that's the point that people need to, like, these are the story. Why talk about the bully? Talk about the bully. I'm okay with it. Let's have a little vice. It's all right. Life is, have fun with it. Right. But when that becomes the only story, but when you walk out and say, you know what, this is the symbol of the community coming together and saying, if you're not going to give me a Mitchell Llama building, we come together and we're going to fight for Mitchell Llama building.
For people who are not familiar with what Mitchell Llama stands for, it's the city providing government assistance to create housing, right?
Right. I think it's senators, who authored the bill that allow for this, and it's subsidized housing.
Right.
Right. And we were so poor as a kid. I said, to Confucius Plaza. So that's how it's built. So I remember when it was built, I said, hey, Dad, everyone's in China is going to move to that building. My father said to me, no, we're not. I said, why not? Of course, the family association, everyone filled the form. I said, Dad, how come we didn't fill the form? He goes, we can't afford to move. Literally, we cannot afford to move.
And how much more was rent?
Rent was like another $20, $30.
A month.
He says, a month. And he says, we can't afford it. Right? He can't afford it. Those are the things that, that makes Chinatown. And, but a lot of people just so simple, oh, yeah, you got your housing. No. You guys built a whole freaking area, a neighborhood of buildings. Right? And then you redline everyone out.
Right.
Until you're ready to retire, you're selling for market rate. That's right. We're all Americans. We need to just stand up.
Right.
We are, we're the living history, right? And, Confucius Plaza, and even after they got it, then have to fight to make sure that our people actually get to
Get in there.
get into work.
Yeah.
To build it. I said, like,
Right.
yeah, man, we can build the Great Wall, we can build the Transcontinental Railroad, but we cannot build Confucius Plaza. Like, what the F, right?
Right.
Well,
You know,
there's a whole other corruption, like building
Well, that's
construction
right.
companies and stuff like that.
But, you know, so then to round up,
Yeah.
all the people that I grew up with, how they all ended up, you know, for the Chinese. So all the blacks and Latinos ended up in other projects, right? You know, public housing. So, you know, you learn as a kid, man, is that how society is? We all have our place, right? You know, so when I hear this segregation, blah, 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 I'm like, hey, man, you know, no one seems to be a problem when I was growing up. When we get stuck in the same walk up, we still have to, you know, other people calling it a museum now, and we're like, no, that's what I do. That's my apartment.
That's reality.
that's-
What you
That's
see in the
reality,
museum, that was our
right?
reality.
That's a reality,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Where you're collecting money to do this stuff. You know, that's you know. So if people want to help out, well, simple. You know, all these Grand Street Co-op now, you know, market rate. So you know, how about the Black and Latino communities? Real easy. All the public housing, privatize it. Let these guys sell their apartments for $1 million.
Right.
Let them cash out. Why is it that the money that went to build a Grand Street Co-op can be privatized? The money that they put in for two bridge towers, that can be privatized, right? So why is it
Right.
that when
They've
it comes
been
to
living there for decades.
when it comes to people of color, it's like, no, you guys gonna be forever in poverty. I think that's what we need to really talk about, systemic change, and just don't look at the word, right? One thing I learned in Chinatown is 衣食住行. Break it down to life's 4 basic necessities, right? 衣, clothing on your back, food on your table, 食,
sick. Yeah.
住, housing, 行, transportation. So whenever I look at something, I'm like, if it doesn't touch one of those, it's not touching people's life. It's impacting one of those, is impacting people's lives. People afraid to go out, that's fucked up,
Yeah.
right? Because of hate, right? People don't get food. Food is not a problem. You know, we got food,
Yep.
right? But housing, like, why are we the one, like I said, the only way that we can get, now we live in a place, oh, you need to have $1 million to buy this 2-bedroom apartment, when someone have life-changing profit from that. And now it's tax shelter, and they don't even have to deal with it because they just buy something in Florida or something and they're good. Like, what's that, right? So I think we need to fight not just to say, hey, this feel-good cause, but make it matter, make it count, make it count.
Problem is too, just to add to that, instead of buying them or privatizing, what they're doing is they're gentrifying, they're pushing them out, they're raising rents.
Yeah, but I mean, if
You know.
someone lives in supposed to be funded public housing, right, that is paid for by government, why do they take all the profit out and leave with them, right? Why don't you leave some to build for the next guy who needed housing, right? Why is it that, so those were affordable housing before, and now you just privatize it and all that goes away. And then this is the other joke, right? Now they build buildings, oh, the 80-20. And I said, I'm always against that. They said, why? I said, because the premise is wrong. You're saying for every luxury building, 80% a market rate, 20% affordable. Are you suggesting to me, the society we live in, that we only have 20% people who needs housing,
Right.
and everyone is 80%
And
doing
keep in
great?
mind that 20% in the affordable housing program, they will be using separate entrances, so the people who can afford don't have to look at
Rich
them.
house, full house.
Right. So they don't have to look at them, and at the same time, and they don't share the same amenities most of the time. So they use different entrances, and they don't have the same access as well.
And I also see the damage to the kids. I always ask myself, if I'm in this situation, would I want it? Do I want that? Right?
Do you want to be the 20%?
Do I want the 20%?
Yeah.
Right? Do I want to be the 20%? And I've seen kids. I mean, you know, very fortunately, I'm professional. I'm doing well and stuff. And you know, so I bought my own condo, and my daughter goes to school, and I've seen some of the kids who live in the 80-20s. Right? It's an awful experience for them. Right? Because like when I was growing up, when I went to NYU, they all remembered me because Don wears the same freaking shirt for 4 days, right? You know?
Your uniform.
Yeah, like people, I said to my daughter, says, oh, Daddy, what kind of sneakers you used to wear? What brand? I'm like, it's called Irregulars, Victoria. In fact, everything I wear have the stamp Irregular on it. You know, I buy so much irregular stuff.
Yeah.
That's my brand. I wear irregulars. And, you know, so you watch these kids growing up, going to this school, you know, like my daughter would say, oh, I just came back from Scotland, blah, 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 blah. And poor kids, like, oh, I went to Chinatown for wonton mee and I had a really good time. It's hard. I don't think putting people in that way, I question. You know, is it really? Is it all we wanted? Are we just that simplicity to say, hey, you're very fortunate. You hit the lotto that you got to live next to rich people? Really? Did they ask to come to live with rich people? Or did they just say, I want a fair shot. I want to be with my family. But like the only option they have is either you get stuck in Chinatown in these tenement apartments, right, or you're going to be a second-class citizen. Right. They don't say it to you. They're very nice to you, but you know every day you're a second-class citizen. Is that how we want to bring our kids up? Is that what the policy should be? You know, I think we really need to question that, right? Why don't we build communities? Why don't we take those money and, you know, I hope that elected officials, especially Chinese elected officials, reach down to your roots, talk to your friends, talk to your family. What do they really want? Really? It's just, you know, we're so happy that you ship us out somewhere to live with some rich people. Is that what we want? No.
Are there any Asian officials, elected officials currently in office or running, or celebrities that's taken a stance on any of this?
I don't know. I know they haven't said shit about it. That's for sure.
Why
right?
Is that,
I mean,
though?
right? Even right now, look how quiet it is. I say, like, the call I get from China Mac and MC. You know, that was the first time that anyone has a platform actually call about it.
We're hearing it from, you know, these people who are not officials, right? I know that in this district assembly, it's run by Asian American.
That's right.
So what have they been doing to support the Chinese community, right? You know, where's de Blasio, right? He comes in and he makes a photo op of going visits these different vendors, but he doesn't actually hear the needs of the community.
Well, we actually, you know, they're asking to put a mega jail in Chinatown, right? So we've been fighting that piece. It's like, wait a minute, you don't need more jails.
Right. Henry Chang was here
right
last year, towards the end of last year, and he certainly highlighted some of the way that they're just bullying the community and saying, no, we're building a jail here regardless of how you feel. And it's right across the street from a park where kids play. It's schools, apartments, like, you know, like, excuse me, who would want a jail being put in your neighborhood, in your community, without the consent of that community, the people living there? You're just going to go ahead and plop it in there?
Right. And it's like 80, that was like 35 million, some crazy amount. But bottom line is like all the developments in Chinatown, and again, just going up my own life experiences, you know, at one time we all live around, you know, Jewish folks here, Italian, Irish guys, right. You know, black and brown. Then all of a sudden they all get moved out. And then what's left, we have also Confucius Plaza, then is the jail, then is the courthouse. Everything that's built are government buildings around us, right? So all the opportunity to really build our community they were never built, right? Even Police Plaza. When I was a kid, Police Plaza now, 1PP used to look like this. Mm-hmm. So they said, oh, we need the new police headquarters. And for the community, you get a parking. So the amenity you get back in exchange for taking away all the housing was that you get public parking. You have the open court area where you can play, open space. Now it's a fortress. They took away all the parking.
They blocked out the entire streets, all the streets.
They blocked the entire street. Yeah. Where I used to be able to play handball, right? They all closed it all down, all for police use only. You know, it's like, who's fighting for us? When they put the jail down there, the detention center, that was supposed to be an open plaza. Now it became a parking lot for correction officers, right? So I raised this issue, but that's it. It doesn't go anywhere, right? You can raise it and boom, 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 and say, yeah. So even for something as trivial as street naming, right? So Zhang Zhak his mom is actually a member at our Homecrest Center. So he's a hero that died, that perished during September 11th. He's a paramedic. He worked in Wall Street. He went back to the building. He called, Mom, I got to help people. She went back. Building collapsed on him. He dies. Right? So they have a street named after him on the corner of Mulberry and Bayard. Right? First, it was further down. And I'm like, can we be a little more respectful? Like the first Chinese American street name in the city of in Manhattan, it's right across the street from the detention center. I'm like, right? Nothing. If our elected officials who can easily say, I would do street namings, what they do best, right? Can't even get that shit done right.
What good are they for?
What good are they for?
Yeah.
Right? And people say, well, how come people losing trust in them? Well, because you haven't done shit. That's why.
And I feel like our identity in the community has been disappearing over time because of gentrification. Also, the fact that people are moving out. And for the longest time, I thought it was because younger Chinese Americans are moving out. And that's why Chinatown's become smaller. But listening to you, it's because people are coming in, outside forces, whatever they may be. They're coming in and taking over. They're
taking over, and then also...
So that's why Chinatown's getting smaller.
That's why Chinatown's
it's not the youth leaving or families leaving. It's other entities building on top of it.
The lack of development. Other than, here, the Constitution Plaza worked. How come there isn't another one? Right? Why is it that everything turns into, the only thing we got is, homeless shelters and all of this stuff, right? And I'm like, hey, it's needed. I'm not saying those are bad things, right? We're not being NIMBY. Like when Chinatown people say something, NIMBY, right? Not in my neighborhood, right? But you put a jail in here, that's okay. You put everything else in here, we've been taking it from you. And when we say one thing, we become NIMBY? Really? Right? I think our elected official need to speak up. And we're always put on the defensive. By the time decisions made is when we get the outrage, right? If you're at the table to work for us, not just to say how wrong you are, how wrong we have been. We know we've been doing that without you. I don't need you to add to that. I need you to really
fight for us.
Fight for us.
Yeah.
Right? Fight for the generation that's been here.
Yeah. And even the future generations.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're not fighting for us?
Because they report to the political machine, right? Because unfortunately, they have to report their masters. Their masters, we're not their masters.
But then, and that's the thing, if they go against their masters, won't the masters just replace them and somebody else will take?
So what? I think it's worth standing up hungry than eating crumbs on your knees. I think that's what they need to do. Wow. Right? Is that what you want? I mean, did you wake up in the morning? It's worth standing up. Why are we going to take crumb from people? It's not like, oh, you know what, has $1 million. I'm putting like these big building. No, I'm giving you this big mega jail, but I'm gonna give you $35 million. You can buy a museum. Like, really?
Can you say that saying again?
It's better to stand up hungry than to be on your knees eating crumbs, right? We don't need that, And these guys are like, hey, we didn't elect you to give me crumbs. We've been getting that shit for hundreds of years. Right? You need to stand up for us, right? You're the one that have to be brave enough to walk away and say, no, we're not taking this. We're not taking this, right? Have the courage. It's just about having courage.
Speaking on a political side in politics, that's almost career suicide.
Fine, don't fight a flag. What you fighting for, right? And then these are the people. How many elected officials I talk to, and they say, well, Don, I'm not going to name names to embarrass them. Just about all of them. I didn't really win my position because, I got votes from Chinese people, and I'm like, now you're spreading the bullshit. Now, half the people here are not qualified to vote because they're immigrant. They don't even have a green card.
Right.
So now you're gonna, right? So really, the only way you're gonna do it. So then why don't you move to a neighborhood where everyone has a green card? Go, and then do that. Every single one of them said to me, I didn't, it's hard because I didn't win. I said, well, then do your redistricting properly. put our people together of common interest and then do that. But it's not good enough for me, for you guys to say, hey, Chinese people didn't vote for me.
So I'm not going to help them out.
I'm not going to help them out. That's
a cop-out. Bullshit. Because they're still part of your district.
Hey, Don, did you ever think about running?
I did. I never did want to run because, I was making good money doing the IT stuff. But, it's a good question. So I ran a couple of years ago, not because I wanted to. Right, so Sheldon Silver's out, and then they say, "Hey," so I'm getting call from people. They say, "Hey, no Chinese Americans are running in this race," and I'm like, "No way, somebody's gonna run." And no, I'm because the job only paid $80,000, right? I'm making good money on that, so I'm like, I got to take care of my family. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what? So I said to my wife, "Wife, is it okay for me to do it?" Because they keep telling me nobody's running. So I came to Chinatown and talked to all the different groups. And they're like, yeah, go for it. I support you. So long story short, once I make my announcement, when it was no Asians running, all of a sudden there are 3 Asians running in addition to me.
Okay.
And I went to one of the restaurant to book an appointment, to book the room for a day to make an announcement. And so this person who is a leader in the, one of the biggest established organizations in political club in Chinatown, happened to be right there trying to book space for her candidate. So I walked up to her and I said, didn't you tell me that you were supporting me? Mm-hmm. Right? Didn't you encourage me for 20 years to run? So why is it when I decide to run now, that not only that you're not supporting me, you're actually pushing someone else to run against me? And she said to me, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to run next year for city council. I didn't know you were going to run for this one. And I'm like, oh, is that what it is? Right? So they have no problem lying. So that happened. But again, I decided to do it only because, people are saying there's no one running. But, and then the people said, hey, you're not going to. Then all my friends said to me, hey, you're not going to make it because you're up against the machine. And I said, you know what? I got to do it because a lot of people want me to do it. The street vendors and a lot of these guys, grassroots. So if you look at my records, man, I raised money all from, street vendors and people like that. And I said, I got to go through the process. I cannot let them down. I cannot let them know that, I said, because it's not about winning or losing. It's about who we are, that you got to believe in it. You got to have to do it. You got to play it through.
You got to have your voices heard, because even when you're running, you're going to have media covering your race, the race. And that word's going to spread. So you going through the whole process, that makes sure that Chinese communities' voices are heard.
Yeah. But again, then they'll also realize as an Asian man, like, dude, you get screwed over like multiple times, right? So I did an interview with New York Times. And so I said to them, so they did not endorse me. But worse, they said, Don Lee, Chinatown businessman. I'm like, right?
That's tough. It makes it look like you have a financial agenda.
I'm like,
personal financial
I said,
agenda.
wait a minute. You guys wrote about me when I brought Firecracker back to Chinatown. You guys mentioned as community activists. You guys wrote about me fighting for the street vendor. That was okay. You guys wrote about me for bringing Grand Street Station. That's okay. But when I decide to run for office, I am Don Lee, the Chinatown businessman.
Wow.
Right? And that's mainstream media, right? That's New York Times for you. And it's not like, so again, it's okay. I just think that all of us have to be willing to do what's right and be able to accept the consequences. Mm-hmm. Sacrificing, look, the civil rights leaders sacrificed a hell of a lot more for us to be here. Right?
You're damn right, yeah.
Right? They did all that, and I'm gonna worry about my own little feelings. I shouldn't do this. I'm like, you know what? If we say that we actually are inspired by them, then they make ultimate sacrifices. We can afford to do some sacrifices on our own.
And you mentioned that with new media, it's the new platform, and it's kind of the way things are progressing. And at the same time, choosing your fights, specifically with our podcast, by having certain guests speak about things, or taking our own stances with certain things where we know it's just blatantly wrong. Forget if you're on the left, if you're right, or the center. It doesn't matter. Wrong is wrong and right is right. That said, we understand that it's risky. We're up here, we said a lot of words, we say a lot of things, and it's not just one podcast, it's a lot. And sometimes someone can extrapolate what you said just on that little 30-second clip and kind of manipulate it how they want it by framing it a certain way. And then they can say, well, this guy's an asshole because here it is. Mm-hmm. Let's cancel this person.
Yeah, so there are things that we're fighting for. And if even with the cancel, all of these things, they're risks that you have to take. But obstacles are there to see how badly you want it. And as long as you say, hey, man, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the community. Right? I told people I don't sleep a lot, but I sleep very well. Because, as long as you're fighting for the community, I'm not fighting for myself, then it's okay. They can say what the hell they want. It really don't bother me. Right? Like you said, I'm very lucky to have the, professional life that I have. Right. Wife that,
right.
believe in what I'm doing.
Because you and I and Norm, we can live very comfortable lives. Right? A lot of people think, it's funny, they think we're doing this podcast and they think this is our 9 to 5. And we go, no, this is our weekend gig.
After work gig.
After work.
Weekend and after 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's a 9 to 5 after the traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
We have jobs, we do well, we get paid a nice salary, we work really hard. And we do this, number one, as a passion, and we want to create this new platform because we know that we think that there's a lot of value to it. And just in the small sample size we've received so far, we're like, wow, this is making an impact on a few lives. And that's enough to keep Norm and I going and charge up. The messages that we get, thank you to you guys. Beautiful messages of encouragement, beautiful messages of just thank you so much for having this guest on. Thank you so much for speaking up for us.
Having these conversations that nobody's talking about.
Right. I didn't think there were people out there willing to take that step. Because yes, it's a lot. Number one, it's a ton of work to do something like this. Number two, it's extremely risky because this day and age, everybody wants to pick apart, especially if you start, you're at a place and they just don't like it for whatever reason. It goes against whatever they're feeling. They want to take it, dissect it, and completely destroy you.
People start judging all these things about, our motivation. And I'm like, well, maybe you're being racist just because you see as a Chinese person saying, no, maybe I'm not supposed to speak up, right? I'm supposed to just take it as it is. Oh yeah, just a shirt. I'm like, what do you mean just a shirt? Thank God she put it out.
Just a shirt?
Just a shirt.
Well, if someone
but she's okay.
Someone poured kerosene on your grandma's back and lit her on fire, I am positive you would want immediate justice.
So let me share with the viewer what she said to me. I said, wow, when she told me I got burned, I said, how do you, I looked at her, I'm like, shit, how did she be so composed? Right? I know her for 20, she's been a member for 20 years. On and off, I don't have that much interaction with them, because I'm the board chair. I just show up once in a while and just say hello. I don't work there. People just think that, Don, it's your nonprofit. You must be making money. I was like, come on, man. I volunteered for 24 years. Why don't you guys try that? Right? Mm-hmm. Don't judge. Just like I'm making money off this stuff. Yeah, maybe there's a lot of money on this. Why don't you try it? Right? So then I talked to this grandma, and she go, oh, those are punks. Kai Jai. I'm like, wow, you just you just
tire,
just brush it off like that. He goes, I've seen worse. I'm like, what?
90 years of living.
90 years. Wow. She says, I grew up when the Japanese were bombing China. I got over to Hong Kong, and then they bombed Hong Kong and had to sneak back into China. He goes, "We'll go to Hong Kong to Choisan." Took me 10 days. I still remember 2 of those days. I slept on the pier for 2 days because I have to wait for the next ferry to get them cross the river.
Yeah.
It's just that alone. And then when they find out my father was from San Francisco, they said, "You must have money." So they try to kidnap her, and they have to take her in the middle of the night to hide somewhere. And she goes, "I seen planes of bombs, and they told us if a bomb drops and you got burned, this is what you do." Like, little does she know what she learned
Prepare
in
her.
war atrocities happens in Bensonhurst, right?
She's the poster child of "they can't burn us all."
Right. So she
That's
says
crazy.
she says, "Oh, go to Kwai Jai, they're punks."
Yeah.
I see much worse people than these guys. I'm like,
Wow.
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 Right. And then she said,
Grandma's gangster.
right.
Yeah,
The
that
rest you heard,
fortitude.
you heard what she said to China Mac and to Jin and these guys. Said, "Hey, we want justice. I'm so proud that you guys are standing up." I'm so, and people is like question me, "Oh, Don, did you coerce her?" I'm like, "Does she look coerced in that
What?
video?" Right? "Oh, you're putting her in danger."
How is she being put in
I said, "I'm
danger?
in danger." I said,
How's she being put in danger by speaking up?
right? So I said to her, "Do you feel?" He says, so she says to me, "I'm 90 years old. What are they gonna do to me?
Right. Do you understand
I'm
that?
looking at you. What I'm doing."
Like, that
She's
could have
so
been your
brave,
grandmother.
yeah.
That could have been your mother. That could be any one of us. That could be any one of us being
Right.
like, we're told we haven't hurt anyone. We haven't done anything to anyone. And then we're just walking down the street. And if someone comes up to you, your significant other, whoever, someone that you care
Right.
about, or someone that you know, and then they just pour you.
But
and,
can I be honest? I told my mom this story, and I told her, like, if that ever happened to you, to anyone I see on the street, a woman being harassed, I'm gonna step in. And my mom said, "You're crazy. Don't do anything, even if it's me." I'm like, but her story, the grandma's attitude towards this, to me, is not typical.
It's not typical.
It's
I
not
totally
typical.
agree with you.
Right.
I totally agree with you on that part. And I think that's why it's amazing that she's telling
It is
her friends.
amazing.
And and that's also the reason why, I'm a frontline worker, right? We're delivering meals to seniors and stuff like that. And I don't really go to public events, anything like that. But when China Mac decided to go, I got a lot of calls. "Don't go." All right. He's a gangster, blah, 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 blah. And then I hear this drama about raising money. And I told my daughter, initially, she said to me, "Dad, are you going to go?" I said, my initial reaction, I wasn't going to go. Not because of COVID, not because of anything else. But when I heard all of this stuff, I said to my daughter, I said, "Victoria, I have to go. And you're coming too."
what's her reaction?
She goes, "Well, you got to observe social distancing, and then we're gonna, she wasn't worried about
You
that.
gotta be safe, Dad.
She's
You gotta be safe.
gonna save Daddy because she's with me delivering food also, right? So because we're dealing with a very vulnerable population, right?
Yeah.
And so I said I have to go, and I have to explain to her. I said I have to go, and because otherwise, people are gonna write these other stories and said he doesn't have the support of the family when he actually has the support. And as if nothing else, I need to be there for that symbolism. Then of course I went there and I said, "I don't need to say." So they said, "You want to say something?" By the time I got there, we were late waiting for Eric Adams. He was not an event, so that's why we were late getting there. So they said, "Would you like to speak?" I said, no, because I see that the crowd was already, I'm like, I had nothing to this conversation, right? At that time, I'm like, "Hi," I had zero to the conversation. In fact, I explained to my daughter, I said, sometimes leadership means taking a step back, right? It's not always in the front,
Yeah.
right? In there, I knew what was my role is to let people
See you,
see
your
me
symbol,
there, that we are with them.
supporting. Yeah.
Actually,
Right.
I love what you just said there. I think leaders, true leaders, really lead from behind.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
I'm not, look, listen, it's a different generation. You guys know what you're doing. I add nothing, I'm observing, learning, but again, I know that what I'm going to add to that conversation. I'm not going to, if I add no value, like someone said, speak only when you add. This is one thing I learned from Giuliani, right? I mean, the thing is,
Back in the,
the thing is
back in the
administration,
90s, Giuliani,
right?
not
But
now.
not now. Now
Yeah,
he's a crazy man. But he said, or is it Charles Wong? He says, we're at a meeting. He says, "Guys, speak only when you add value to the conversation." right? Silence is better than that, so it's okay if you don't. So I think when I went there, I said, hey, I don't have, but you know what happened? Then online people say, oh, they did not allow him to speak.
Oh, total
What?
bullshit.
Yeah.
Is this at the first rally in Benton?
The first one. Yeah. They said, oh, they didn't allow him to speak. I said, no, that's bullshit. I had no value. I said,
Who
I'm
the
glad
fuck
you
is saying
asked.
these things?
This
then?
is the whole crap mentality, right? So when I ran for office, that was the things that I said to my wife. I said, you're going to know whether you had a good husband or bad husband because they'll take everything out about me.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, I think you did okay, honey, because the only thing they said about me was his name is spelled L-E-E. He's not really Chinese. He's Korean. That's from your elected official.
That is crazy.
That's from your elected official
first of all,
right
how
now.
How is that a bad thing? Like,
right? That's
even if you were Korean. I mean, if you were Korean right now sitting across from me, it changes nothing. And you still have the same resume,
right?
Same person, but you're Korean. That doesn't change.
But they were telling all the seniors here,
discrediting him.
Vote for the Chinese candidate,
Chinese
not the Korean candidate. That's our own people. That's the same. That's your elected official right now.
They didn't count that you're in the boots to the ground. You know the community. You know these seniors. You know everyone
and
here.
the senior, the one that told me, he said they said that about you. He said, "Are you really Korean?" I'm like.
I said, that's Chinese.
No, he says, it doesn't matter that you're Korean. I voted for you anyway, is what they said to me, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm like, who said I'm Korean? Right? Then the other one was like, oh, he's really arrogant. He doesn't really care community. He'll come in, do something, take credit, and then he leaves. I'm like, really? Right? But I said, if that's the only thing you got, I said to my wife, I said, your husband's pretty clean.
But still, man, words like that are so fucking annoying. When you know it's not true, when you're putting in all the work, when you're actually the opposite of that, and they're saying, no, you're that, it is completely infuriating.
But they're like roaches, right? So when I see them, just like that leader, I'm not going to name her name, but maybe one day. but this is head of this major democratic organizations in Chinatown, the one who started it all. And they said to me, oh, I thought you were running next year. This other one, I said to them, I said, I said, you are one of these local Democratic leaders in this district. People are telling me that you're saying that about me online. All right? Turns around and runs. I'm like, yeah, that's what happened to cockroaches, man. You set light on them, they run.
Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh, damn, Don.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a bar.
Right.
It is.
Jeez.
Right. But this is but it's okay. Like I said, we'll do our piece. I see hope in what you guys are doing and what the new media will bring. That we don't have to compete with the soundbite, and then where the whole narrative is already painted.
Mm-hmm.
That we eat in restaurants with neon lights.
20%, just the 20%. They're offering just the 20%.
So we're asking for the same equal rights as everyone else.
else.
We're not asking for more, and we're not willing to accept less. We're asking for the same damn thing. And if you don't take it while we're asking, eventually, if you don't give it while we're asking, eventually it's going to lead to something much bigger, and it's going to be a much bigger problem for those people to control. It's going to be a bigger fire than you can ever imagine.
Right.
So to those people, you have to be careful, because right now we haven't really began the true fight. We're just asking right now. We're trying to do this peacefully. And if that doesn't work, somebody else, it may not be us, but there will be someone else. There will be someone else that's going to put their foot down and is going to start a movement. And that person, that man or woman, would be able to gather enough people to rally behind this. It's a new generation. You guys must be careful. You got to stop playing these stupid games. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Mic drop.
Yeah. They need to understand that there's other people fighting for us, that we don't all have a crabs in a bucket mentality, that our stories are actually very rich and very beautiful and deep. Our culture is so powerful and just absolutely gorgeous. Don't get drowned out by this.
The modern minority myth, the stereotypes.
But if you want to look at it as a cool factor, if you're a teenager and you're listening, or you're in your 20s or 30s, whatever, you want to look at like the cool factors, we have the coolest fucking shit. But it's up to you guys to take that history that we have, that they left for us, and modernize it to this day and age and make it cool for yourself. Kind of do a little bit of a remix because everybody else does it.
Right.
Why can't we take our own stuff and remix and make it dope, right? And modernize it for our generation. Mm-hmm. Why don't we do that, right? There's a lot of cool things about our stuff, man. I'm telling you, look at the movies, look at the clothes, come on, they got Year of the whatever, rat, horse, sneakers, you know, that they take.
Yeah.
You know, they take a lot, these corporate entities take what we have, and how many Chinese people get paid off of that?
Yeah.
How many Asians get paid off of their ideas? Is that monetized?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And then the other thing is like, talk about food, you know, if you have time in the future time, we should have a whole conversation on chop suey, right? I cook chop suey. That's how I paid my way to college. So all you people who have never cooked chop suey, stop knocking it. Stop making excuses. Stop saying how wrong it is.
Stop saying you never ate it.
Stop saying you never ate it, right? Stop saying, you know, stop knocking. The first fusion food in America should be recognized as that and not a travesty that you guys took it to be. So for all you foodies out there, stop knocking it. I want to be the voice for all those voiceless chefs who did an honest living. The cooking style is 100% Chinese. They learn how to make it work. Instead of recognizing for that, you guys are making fun of them. So don't victimize your own people. So unless you have cooked Chinese,
don't shame them.
Don't shame them. You have never cooked chop suey before. I have, and you know, don't knock it.
Now, how do you feel about that? I mean, recently that has been a subject matter where people are addressing. That's been gaining some headlines, where non-Asian people either making Chinese food or owning a Chinese restaurant or a dim sum restaurant,
or even taking a name like an Asian type name, but it's not, has nothing to do with Asian cuisine.
Well, let's stick with that first, where they are making Asian cuisine and they're just not Asian though.
I mean, in a day is appropriation.
If they do it in a respectful way, right? I mean, if they're like, hey, I'm paying homage to your culture, that's one thing. But when they got shit like, oh, I'm doing this because it's more healthy. I'm like, hey, a quarter of the world's population are Chinese. If it's not so healthy, we'd be dead by now. Like, come on.
Right.
And we won't be living to 90s,
Right.
100 years old.
Right. Asians at the in terms of longevity is number one in this in the world, definitely New York, right? So I think if they do it in a respectful way and not just profiteering off of it. I mean, we're talking about, you know, lettuce wrapped. So I did a whole lot of research. I did a whole, you know, my proudest moment is during the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike. I was actually invited to be part of that program. I did a whole cooking thing about what they cooked. From that research, I find out like, hey, you know, don't knock it.
That sounds like a fun venue to be at.
That's a lot of things that, you know, so, but people are all knocking, oh, Chinese. So if they respect it and not profiteering off of it, I'm all right with it. The problem
So
is,
am I.
Right?
So am I. I'm okay with Mexican, white, Italian, Japanese, whoever. If they want to open up a Chinese restaurant and they do it right and not knocking it, saying that it's better than actual Chinese restaurants.
And you know what? We're going to do something good. We're going to donate to the homeless. We're going to give some money to China. I was like, come on, man. Here you go again. Like, we're the perpetual victims. We're the perpetual foreigners, and we're the perpetual victim needing a handout. Like, come on. All right? So
yeah, we're not looking for that. I can tell you that right now. That's never been within our culture. I can remember as a kid when other parents, because I didn't grow up rich, and when my other friends, when I started making a different network of friends, and my parents started, they're seeing like they're giving me gifts, like their parents were buying me like clothes and baseball cards, like a whole box of them. Whereas back then I would only have I had to save up just to get one pack with a gun in it. You got the
little tin can where you save them in, and you go,
exactly. I had a tin can and I kept it in my box of my most recent sneaker that I bought because I only had one pair of shoes, you know. So I had everything in there. And when I started coming home with like these baseball, my mom and dad, my mom's going, "Where the heck did you get that from?" You know. And then when they started finding out that I was getting stuff either from my relatives or friends, she would go, give it back now.
That's right.
Give it back.
That's right. That's what my dad would say to me as a kid.
I hated that.
He says, remember, when you walk into a store, all right, unless we're going to be buying something, don't touch it. All right? And don't walk too fast. Right? Walk slow.
Right.
Right? And he says, the fact that we don't have money you're not buying anything. So don't touch anything. So, but we're gonna go in there because some relatives are there. So, you know, you have those conversations with your parents, and then you know, and then you hear all this crazy stuff with people judging you with, you know, what have all these ideas about you, right? That I said, you know nothing about me, right? Just because now I got to run IT for a couple of hospitals, and all of a sudden you know nothing about me. Don't make those assumptions. Right. But there's a lot of other history. But when they see that, I think that's why classism is the biggest issue than anything else. Right. You know, we definitely have to fight it, and I think we definitely, again, tell a more richer story of what's behind it. Don't let other people tell a story. When we start repeating it without fact checking it, we are accessory to a crime.
Yeah, and I'm happy to eat Chinese food made from anyone as long as it's good.
Yeah,
it's good. Like if a white man wants to make my Chinese food, if a black man, if a Mexican, I don't care. If it's good, I'm there. Like
Cheesecake Factory's got like egg rolls, lettuce wrap. That's all Chinese.
And
food.
You know what? And, yeah, exactly. And then you know what? And there's Chinese people that own sushi restaurants.
That's right.
I know a very good place that does like $50 omakases, and they're owned by Fujianese people. Mm-hmm. And it's a really high-end Japanese food. I mean, we went there to eat.
They source it direct products from Japan.
And I've gone into pizzerias made by Mexicans.
Right.
Fully made by Mexicans, and I even think it's Mexican-owned. You know? So, but the Mexicans are making the Italian food in that specific restaurant that we went to, and the pizza, and it's absolutely delicious.
Right.
Delicious. And I've actually seen a couple of Mexicans cook in the Chinese restaurants in Chinatown. Yep. In the back when I walked by, I was like, oh, shoot. Yeah. So, you know what? And it was delicious. So, you know, I have no problem with that. But the problem lies when you try to make yourself seem holier than thou.
Right.
And when you have to step on that fucking pedestal and say, I'm taller than you, bitch.
And you disrespect
and you
the
want to
culture.
look down on everyone else, then you're disrespecting the culture. Now I have a problem with your fucking restaurant and your food, and so do the rest of us. Because right there, that's not it. That's definitely not how you do it. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. We shared a video clip for you in Washington Square Park. And quite a few people reached out to us and said, how do I follow this guy? Do you have a social media presence?
No.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. I spend all my time follow these guys. I will.
Yeah, we'll be your liaison.
If there's something, we'll be your lead. If there's super something important, then
I spend. You know, I'm still doing some. The creative side in me, it's technology. So, you know, I in the last 15 years or so, right, help automate a couple of hospitals, including Bellevue Hospital Center, and also a lot of clinic, and it really hasn't gotten its job. So the one thing I want to do is, for my technology background, is to build something that will make it work. I think it needs to be not at the hospital level, not at the clinic level, but at individual patient level. So that's what I'm working on. The other time I spend in the senior center just to help out. But the one thing that I'm working on right now, sign that petition. We're not just going to be in bitch and moan and then it goes away. We're going to fight this thing through. We're looking for systemic change. So since our elected officials not speaking up, they're more answering to the masters, the political machine. I need all of you guys to make sure that we sign that petition.
Can you elaborate on the petition?
So the petition, actually, I want to keep credit is due. So I'm talking to MC Jin, and he says, well, you know, we're going to do the rally. Are we going to do anything more than that? And I'm like, you're right. Am I just going to go there and just say bitch and moan and then go another day? And I said, we need to do something. And then I talked to my team and said, we're going to ask for three things. Number one, classify this as a hate crime because it's important, right? Or get other services. Number two, add additional services. Number three is to change the legislations, amend it, add them, whatever it is, because currently it's not working for us. So they did a little bit from one, a little bit of two. So we're really pushing for, and I'm working for a team of lawyers who are really looking into this, and we're going to make it work. Our obstacle is, like someone said to me, he says, Don, you know, I think we have like close to 42,000 signatures so far. He says, yeah, you got 42,000 signatures, but not one of the Asian American elected officials spoken out.
Oh, wow. It's true. Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
Right.
How about Asian celebrities? Anyone with any platform have that? I mean, besides Daniel Wu,
MC
Jin,
and China Mac. That's it.
Really quickly, is there anything we can do to help to support the defense, the attorneys or the lawyers that are working on the case?
Right now, we are, all pro bono lawyers, and we're talking to pretty smart people to look at that. So actually, to make sure that we do it right. So, like all the cases I worked before, so there's a lot of pro bono lawyers that work for me on those. So we have prosecutors as well as defense attorney to look into this stuff.
Okay.
So we're working on it, and we might, if there's an opportunity that needs to file a lawsuit, we will. Right? We're not, because our ancestors have done this many of times. Right? It's just that somehow in 2020, I got lawyers telling me that it's not a hate crime, and we got all the other bullshit stuff. But it doesn't matter. It's not about them. It's about fighting for the community. It's about this moment in history where people are questioning, rightfully so, how are things supposed to work, right? And this is the time for us to ask. I'll put in our question too. This is our question. How are we going to be protected? Yeah. Why is this not a hate crime?
And are things working for us?
Are things really working for us? Yeah. And go for that 4 simple thing, right? 衣食住行, right? Clothes on your back, food on the table, roof over your head, and transportation. That's it. And one simple rule I have is, if I don't see anything negative that's hurting my community, either I follow or I get out of the way. If you guys, what's the point? I don't understand all this craziness that's out there that's pulling us back. Yeah. Right. Enough already.
Don Lee, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Sincerely, thank you for sharing your stories. These are some fantastic stories. I enjoyed our conversations from the moment I stepped in. Yeah. You're doing some beautiful things out there, and you're definitely charging up.
You charged us.
Yeah. I appreciate that. No, appreciate it. Like you said, it's lucky to have this opportunity to talk, and I think we'll keep going.
Certainly inspiring. Thank you guys for listening. This is Lucky Boys Podcast. Until the next one, guys, we're out to the rally.